Opioids. It's an epidemic that's killing America. We'll explore why and meet somebody who's been personally affected on this episode of The Hot Zone.
This is The Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hi, folks. I'm Chuck Holton. Nearly 800,000 Americans have died from drug overdoses since 1999, just in the United States. Last year, that level was 6 times higher than it was in 99, and more than 130 people are dying from drugs every day. It started out with prescription pills back in the 90s, and then moved to heroin in the 2000s, and lately, the amount of synthetic drugs like fentanyl is killing more people than ever. It's a nationwide epidemic that's affecting more than 2 million Americans a year. Now, the demand for these drugs is a boon for narco-traffickers. They're shipping more fentanyl and heroin into the United States now than ever before. And they're taking advantage of the chaos on the U.S. southern border to drive convoys full of this poison into our country every day. Last year alone, U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized enough fentanyl to kill the entire population of the United States. And that's just the stuff they caught. The economic impact of this crisis is north of $500 billion a year. That's enough to build the border wall 30 times over. So this is much more than a national security crisis, and it's more than a law enforcement issue. It's a cultural crisis that's rotting America from the inside out. Southern West Virginia is one of the hardest hit areas of the country, and I've done a good bit of reporting on that over the years since I've got a home in Southern West Virginia. And I'm going to show you some of that reporting today because it's every bit as relevant now as it was 5 years ago. Only now the problem's even much more pervasive and that much more urgent. You know, everywhere you look here in Southern West Virginia, you see remnants of a bygone era. This soda fountain was here since 1912. And back then, this was a very thriving community with strong religious faith, strong work ethic, and full employment. But as the jobs went away and were replaced by government entitlement programs, the culture started to crumble. And while it still might look the same on the outside, this is a place that will never be the same again.
I can show you where my brother personally died from a drug overdose. And a month later, there was a lady murdered. She was stabbed 14 times.
Your brother died right here?
Yes, on the other side of the building, that's correct.
Boone County in Southern West Virginia has one of the highest rates of overdose deaths from prescription drugs of any county in West Virginia. And the West Virginia State Police are doing everything they can to put a stop to it.
The breaking and enterings and just about every crime that we're seeing is related to drugs in some form or fashion.
Fatal drug overdoses involving prescription drugs is the #1 cause of death. It outranks automobile fatalities here.
We have people who start abusing pills when they're as young as 11, 12 years old. We see families torn apart.
There's really nothing for kids to do out here, so we always went up in the mountain somewhere, and at 14 and 15, we're drinking, sitting around a fire. So what was the next step when you hit 18? You know, everybody was tired of that. I mean, every single day, no matter where you stop here, you see some kind of drug deal.
It's all around you. It's all you know. It's all you see.
A lot of the people I deal with are being raised by their grandparents or great-grandparents because either their mommies and daddies don't care because they're always high, or in a lot of cases, their mommy and daddies are dead because of drug overdoses.
It's the drug that you have the most readily available that is going to come into the hands to where people experiment with. And that's one of the things that you see in the high schools, is people go to mom and dad's medicine cabinet and get some, and they take it.
You know, both my parents sold, they dealt, they did. Mm-hmm. And of course, back then, it was out right there in front of us.
I have 3 daughters I'm raising here, and I don't want them to have to fight the same battles that other kids are fighting today to stay away from the dangerous drugs and the crime that's going on with the drugs that are here today.
Tackling the problem is a real challenge for law enforcement in these areas, partially because legitimate institutions are supplying most of the drugs, and because unlike cocaine or heroin, pills are legal to own, carry, and use as long as one has a prescription.
Went to the doctor, got prescribed pain pills. Took it from there, got addicted to pain pills, went to harder stuff, and, sooner or later you lose everything and you get sick and tired of being sick and tired.
We have to decide, are the people really having legitimate pain, or are they here just to get medications?
We'd been working a case on this gentleman. We were buying pills off individuals, Ziploc bags, large quantities from people in the community. And once we started investigating the source of supply, they led us to a doctor's office that was practicing here. He was a top 5 prescriber at the time, I believe, in the state of West Virginia.
Small rural clinics sometimes contribute to this problem, willingly or unwillingly.
We're watching an undercover video to go into his office and to basically see what is going on inside his office and see what his standard of practice is.
Doctors have been arrested for running what are known as pill mills, where drug users can purchase prescriptions without having to demonstrate a legitimate need.
I've been trying to get a driver's license.
This is the CI walking into the doctor's office. What this girl's doing is documenting on the calendar and the chart of when she gives them the scripts and when her next visit's going to be. The girl there has a cash register where she just gave her back some change. She actually paid for her husband's office visit and her office visit just for walking in. And then she ended up with total, I think it was over 500 hydrocodone tablets and a couple hundred Valium tablets. So then you have them to use or to sell.
Certain areas of the countries don't have the same prescription pill problem we have here. An example of that would be the Detroit area or the Columbus area. So what we're seeing the pill pushers buy the drugs up there at relatively cheap prices as compared to West Virginia, bring them down here, sell them, make the extra money, and then take that money back north with them.
I've spoken to several people down here that, they'll tell you that they make a pretty decent living off of just selling pills. On some conditions or some buys, we've paid as much as $160 for one tablet. And it's crazy the amount of money.
So a guy gets hurt in the coal mine and he gets a prescription for one of these. And he can sell this on the street. That's 100 pills?
Yeah.
Okay. That's $8,000
yeah.
right there. I mean, around here, that's 6 months' income.
Mm-hmm.
Your drug addict that's on drugs usually doesn't have money, so they're going to break into houses to try to either steal drugs or to steal items to trade for money, to get drugs, pawn shop, take money, or take stolen items to pawn shops.
For somebody that's just surviving, they'll do whatever it takes. They'll take whatever they can. They'll steal. They'll do whatever it takes to survive.
The people that we encounter that are hurting themselves can also be hurting other people, whether they're breaking in homes, stealing from people, driving down the road while they're high on these pills. They do hurt other people.
Here in southern West Virginia, it's easy to see, even in the dead of winter, that this place has a lot to offer in the way of beauty and natural resources. But for the citizens who live here and the police who are fighting these battles against prescription drug abuse, this is truly a Frontlines. I just want to stop and encourage you to go watch more of the Frontlines episodes that we made over the last 6 years. It's really well produced, and the NRA doesn't get enough credit for how much it tries to make America safer, even when it doesn't have to do with guns, just by getting the word out with shows like Frontlines. Same with this podcast. Please share it with your friends. If you go and subscribe over at patreon.com/hotzone, you're going to get access to a bunch of special features, like free copies of my books and access to some of the paid content I've produced on church security and a whole lot more. All right. So last year, I went and interviewed my friend Leon Brush. He's got some real skin in this game and is working really hard to drag addicts out of that life in southern West Virginia and give them some hope. Take a look. Here in the southern part of West Virginia, it's actually been, I think this county had the most overdose deaths of any county in the country. Is that right? This is Leon Brush. And just tell us a little bit about yourself, Leon.
I'm Leon Brush here in southern West Virginia, where we have the #1 deaths due to drug overdoses in the nation. If you had a target on the United States, the target would be right here in Beckley.
And you have some personal experience with this, right?
Yes, my wife and I lost our third son, Brian, to a drug overdose, and it totally changed the way we look at the opioid crisis.
That was about 10 years ago, right?
That was about 10 years ago, and it was life-changing.
Yeah, it was. It was life-changing for a lot of people because Leon took that pain and used it to do something good. So he's started a halfway house, or kind of a safe house, for recovering drug addicts here in southern West Virginia. And tell me a little bit about the numbers of what who you've been able to help since you started this.
Well, we've helped hundreds and probably thousands by now, families, since we opened the doors of Brian's Safe House. And last year we actually opened it up to the women in the southern West Virginia area. And what a surprise. There is just as much addiction among women as there was also with men. And that totally has been eye-opening to see how pervasive the problem is.
So, Grant, here in southern West Virginia, when a guy gets picked up for, carrying drugs or selling drugs and is an addict, sometimes the judge will give him a choice of going to jail or going to the safe house. Is that correct?
Yes, we often work with the legal system, and instead of sending them to prison where they learn more evil ways, they have the opportunity to come to Brian's Safe House and actually learn how to live without drugs.
And they've done a great job with that. And full disclosure, we're supporters of this safe house. And I can tell you, there's no better place that I feel, nothing that makes me feel better about the money that we give to charity, for sure.
Absolutely. Leon, can I ask you, because I've covered this epidemic for many years as well, can you tell me about your son? My guess is you've got pictures of him as a small child, acting like every other kid. This could have been any one of our sons or daughters that went through this. Can you tell me about him and how he ends up in a position? And the reason I ask you is I want other parents out there to get the message that this could be their kid very easily.
Yeah, for sure. It could be any family that could be blighted by this terrible crisis. But for our family, I was a business owner here in southern West Virginia, a floor covering business, and was a church attending family. Our son Brian went to church every Sunday, and Wednesday night was in the youth group, went to a Christian school, I served on the school board there. We were your all-American, God-following, Bible-toting, gun-toting, just regular people in southern West Virginia. And then the Saturday that my own son came to me and he said, Dad, he was 20 years old when he first told me this. He said, Dad, I'm an addict and I don't know what to do. And that changed my life forever. And for 3 years, we tried to help Brian find his way.
You know, and how did it came about because he had a back injury, right? Is that right? He had a back injury, and he'd broken up with a girlfriend.
Yeah,
right?
He had a girlfriend, and she was going away to college and said, I don't want to have a permanent relationship. When I'm going away to college, I would like to have the freedom. And Brian couldn't handle it, so he went to his friend's house, and they said, let me show you a way to get away from the pain.
You know,
and that was the beginning of his opioid addiction.
The sad part for every parent, and I have an 8-year-old at home, so he's not quite at this level, but still you send them off into the world. You send them to school, you send them to play dates at kids' houses. You have no control over what goes on then. And it's imperative that you stay involved, but sometimes no matter what you do, you can't help what happens. What's your advice to parents to make sure this doesn't happen to their child, Leon?
Well, step one is to watch the cell phone. The cell phone is probably the most common instrument that's used by the young people, and it all starts out most of the time pretty innocent. They don't really understand what they're getting into. The peer pressure, the cell phone is probably the biggest hidden factor.
Yeah. Chuck, can I ask you, on the side of this epidemic, we talk about the opioid crisis, we talk about the borders and drugs getting in, but typically these are prescription drugs getting in the hands of these youngsters. How are they getting their hands on these drugs?
Well, in this part of the world, Grant, it's a coal mining country. A lot of coal miners, actually, it's almost just embedded in the culture that, hey, you're going to get injured at some point and you're going to get some time off to recover from your injury. You go and you get a prescription for the pain, whether it's a, torn meniscus or broken whatever. And those pills are worth about $80 a piece on the street. And so if you got a 6-month supply of those pills, you can dramatically increase your income by selling them. And you yourself can just take Tylenol or something for the pain. And as long as you can milk that out, you can keep making money. And that, again, it's just embedded in the culture here in Southern West Virginia. And so we have friends of mine that are in law enforcement. They'll say that they very rarely find large amounts of other illegal narcotics like marijuana or cocaine or things like that, not like you see down toward the border, because it's just so easy to get the prescription medications here. And they've also had doctors that, they call them pill mills, that just, they are known as the doctor you go to if you want to get yourself a nice fat prescription for oxycodone or whatever. But as we've seen in this part of the world, the devastation that causes is absolutely unspeakable. It's really incredible how many people, there are very few families that have not been touched by this crisis.
Well,
that's all the time we've got for today, folks. I'm down in the jungles of Panama as you watch this, and I'll be bringing you some amazing content out of there later this week that has to do with the immigration crisis. So stick around. Please like and share the podcast with your friends. It really helps us. And as we close in on our 100th episode this Friday, you're not going to want to miss that one. It'll be a great episode for sure. So thanks for being part of the Hot Zone. I'm Chuck Holt.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.